Hello there, Brick Fanatics. Here we are at the end of another year as we say goodbye to 2024. And as the calendar changes and we look at 2025 and everything that is coming in the next year, now is an absolutely brilliant moment to take a second and just appreciate everything that we did get from LEGO in 2024. Specifically today we are looking at the top 10 minifigures that were released during 2024. The Brick Fanatics staff all got together and made our own top 10 picks, and then this was collated to produce the list that you are about to enjoy now. If you've been on the Brick Fanatics website in the past month, you will probably already have seen this list, but I'm going to spice things up a little bit in this video and talk a little bit about my personal connection to some of these minifigures and the characters that they depict. What's more, stay tuned because one of the entries on this list is going to make me very, very angry. Start your guesses now as to which one that might be. And of course it goes without saying that if you have a different top 10 minifigure pick from 2024, then not only is that absolutely fine, but it is encouraged. Make sure that you share your opinion with us down in the comments below. With all of that said, here are the Brick Fanatics top 10 minifigures of the year 2024. Number 10, The Lady of Pain. I think it's no surprise that a minifigure from the Dungeons & Dragons collectible minifigure series ended up on this list because a lot of them were absolutely fantastic, and while my personal pick was either the Aarakocra Ranger or the Bard, The Lady of Pain is an absolutely brilliant choice as well. She is a wonderful, wonderful minifigure. One of the criticisms that I've heard of licensed minifigures as of late is that often, instead of being a Lego-ified version of a famous character, the LEGO group will just do a custom mold for the head and just make the character and then put it on a minifigure body. And for some characters that works very well, and for others people tend to be just a little bit less impressed. I personally quite like the way that the Lady of Pain has been approached here, where she has a standard normal minifigure head underneath what is essentially a helmet element that kind of clips over the top. So you've got the custom molded element that is very much specific to her, but within the confines of the standard LEGO minifigure design, so that she feels a little bit less like a minifigure wearing a mascot costume. What's more, this minifigure also comes with that wonderful cloak element which just flows out beneath her, making her feel all the more imposing, especially as she's levitating in the air thanks to her trans element. It's such a fun way of doing this minifigure, making her feel a little bit more imposing and intimidating than a minifigure normally will look, even a supposedly intimidating minifigure like, say, Darth Vader. And while not necessarily part of the minifigure itself, she does also come with that brilliant little cubic gate. I really love the printing on it. It just looks absolutely spot on, and it's wonderful to have that in LEGO form. Based on reports I've heard, it is the Dragonborn Paladin of all of these collectible minifigures that just disappeared off of store shelves the quickest, but it's got to be said the Lady of Pain is one of the highlights of this particular series of collectible minifigures. Next up, it's Lord of the Rings time. Here he is, Sauron himself. There is a danger, I feel, and you'll see this as we go through the list, where sometimes we end up getting so excited about seeing a favourite character in LEGO form that they end up making these top 10 lists just because we're like, oh, brilliant, it's a Sauron minifigure. And I don't feel like every single licensed character really deserves a spot on the top 10 list. You've got to do something extra and be something a little bit more unique. And Sauron definitely delivers on that with the gorgeous design of his helmet in particular that just looks absolutely so cool. Not only is it spot on to the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films, it's just got a level of detail and wonderful carving to it that you don't always get with a LEGO minifigure helmet. If you look beyond the helmet though, you'll also see the care and attention to detail that went into the printing on his torso and on his legs. It is just so gorgeous, and it really shines with a wonderful contrast with blacks and then bright shining silver that just really make him gleam and shine. Now, not everything in the Lord of the Rings universe shines and glimmers all of the time. This is a very grubby world, but it is brilliant to see Sauron in all of this shimmery, shiny regalia, because it really emphasizes that level of detail and the care and the attention that went into designing this particular printing. LEGO fans have long been wanting a really, really nice Sauron minifigure, an official one at that, and this one absolutely delivers on everything that people have been hoping for. Speaking of minifigures that have been long awaited, the next one on our list is another one that fans have been desperate to get hold of and finally now have, is Gambit. He certainly made a name for himself this year. Yep, Gambit has made his physical minifigure debut. Of course, he's turned up in video games and whatnot in the past, but finally people can now have their own little Gambit minifigure. And the only real question is, why on earth did this take so long? X-Men have been through so much in recent years in terms of Disney actively trying to hamper the brand when they didn't have it, and now finally embracing them and just throwing them everywhere at the point where they could potentially be the saviors of whatever it is Disney's up to with the MCU at the moment. So it is really exciting to see Gambit finally get the love and the attention that he has deserved for a very long time, despite having gone mostly ignored. If, by the way, you are a big fan of Gambit and you feel, shall we say, underserved by a lot of the live-action offerings, minus a key notable exception, I definitely recommend you check out basically any comic written by Kelly Thompson that happens to feature the Raging Cajun. In particular, I recommend the Rogue and Gambit Ring of Fire trade paperback, because if you are a fan of their relationship from the cartoon series in the 90s, this delivers the closure that you have been waiting for a very, very long time. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Let's talk about the minifigure itself. As said, it is not enough to make this list simply to be a minifigure version of a character that people have wanted to see in LEGO form for a very long time. This Gambit needs to do something special, and I absolutely, again, love the printing design on his front. It's not as complicated as Sauron's design, but not every minifigure needs complicated printing. Sometimes a bold and striking design is all the more potent. For me, it's all about the shading on this one, where he's got that wonderful pink all over his torso, and then the darker magenta colour underneath to add all of the detail and the shadows that you would want to see, and that look very, very reminiscent of a comic page. It also happens to look an awful lot like the X-Men 97 art style, and I absolutely do not think that that is an accident, given that this set is definitely X-Men 97 in LEGO form, which is something that really is just wonderful to have, regardless of anything else. It's nice to have this particular interpretation of the X-Men, and in particular this interpretation of Gambit, because this is the best Gambit. Also, again, going beyond the minifigure itself, I love the design of this energy beam as he throws out his playing cards here. This is such a beautiful element in such a fun colour, and it really sells Gambit's powers as they appear in comics and in cartoons, and in his most recent live-action adaptation. Sorry, Taylor Kitsch, you just weren't quite what we were after. Right, moving on. Number 7, it is time to finally talk about a minifigure that is not a licensed character, but is still awfully nostalgic for LEGO fans of a certain age. It's Vampire Knight. LEGO nostalgia is unavoidable. LEGO has been going for so long that those of us who were kids when we played with this stuff initially are now adults, and when we see something that reminds us of the LEGO we played with as kids, we go, ooh yes, time to open my wallet. For a minifigure to be really good though, it needs to not just be a nostalgic replication of what we've already had, it needs to push things further somehow, it needs to flesh things out. And Vampire Knight absolutely delivers on that by taking the initial premise of the Vampire Knights and expanding it and running with it to its logical conclusion, actual vampire. So yes, it's nice to see the Vampire Knight shield again, it's nice to see that iconic helmet design again, but then you take off the helmet and underneath is such a fun minifigure face. There's just so much wit and charm to the way that this one's been put together. It just feels not necessarily spooky, because I don't think that the goal here was to make a spooky Vampire Knight, but it just feels, it tickles me. It's just so much fun. There's been a lot of debate this year around coloured eyes and when that works and when that absolutely doesn't work, and we've had some minifigures that have had this new design of eyes that really don't suit it. I'm looking at you, Ezra. But sometimes it is perfect, and with Vampire Knight I think it absolutely works to have those big red eyes that are glowing, that are giving off this kind of ominous energy that really sell the evilness of the Vampire Knight. Now personally I have a particular fondness for the Vampire Knight aesthetic for a good reason. I do remember very distinctly going to Legoland as a child. We went to Legoland like twice a month because we lived so close to it, and I wanted to get some more castle minifigures, because what I was doing at the time as a kid playing with Lego was all castle things, and I wanted some more knights, and I went and there was a Vampire Knight box there. I don't remember which one specifically. I do remember the minifigure that came out of it, and he was very important to my play for the next few years as a kid. And so the Vampire Knights are definitely the faction among LEGO Castle that means the most to me and that I have the most nostalgic fondness for. And so seeing that really taken to its extreme here with an actual evil vampire knight, it just feels like a perfect continuation of what I was doing as a child. And so here it is, my childhood recreated in LEGO form for me as an adult, and I get to share that with my kids, and that is very, very fun. Next on the list, and wouldn't you know it, it's LEGO nostalgia yet again, because we've got Jedi Bob. I like Jedi Bob. Just to recap the backstory, although I'm sure you're already aware of it, once upon a time when the LEGO Group was doing these licensed Star Wars sets, they weren't really sure what to do with kind of extras and additional characters and guys who were in the background of Clone Wars things, for example. And so they made Jedi Bob, which was just a generic background Jedi that could just be in a set, and they didn't really think about it. And the fans latched onto this with such a fury, such a force, if you will, and would not let this character go, so that by now in 2024, when we got the Rebuild the Galaxy Disney Plus show, the logical character to include to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi mentor figure here was Jedi Bob, the actual original character, complete with scuff marks in his design, complete with wear and tear that we had from that original set, in order to pay a nostalgic homage to everything that the LEGO fan community had done with the character over the years. This is very much a case of the LEGO Group putting something out and saying, oh, there we go, and then not thinking about it again, and then the fans saying, we are going to do something with this, we are going to make something out of this nothing character, and then the LEGO Group eventually cycling back round and saying, okay, we will pay due respect to what you have done with this, and we will give it a place within the LEGO pantheon. And that's wonderful and so much fun. And so while there are some minifigures on this list which have made the list because they are detailed, because they are intricate, because they have got really brilliant additional printing or additional helmets or additional other stuff, this one is here because of how basic it is, because it is such a picture-perfect recreation of the original Jedi Bob from back in the day. Like, if you put this side by side with that OG LEGO Jedi Bob, they are the same, minus those scratches, minus those scuffs, minus that wear and tear. And it is so fabulous to see that level of attention to detail even in the recreation of something that is so basic. And obviously, yes, there are going to be minor cosmetic differences here, slight differences in the shade of grey, or slight differences in the way that the head is put together, etc, etc, but these things really don't matter when the LEGO Group has clearly gone the extra mile here to deliver something that's a little bit shonky, a little bit old-fashioned, a little bit dated, so that we can enjoy that nostalgia, and I just think that's fun. Number 5, Ice Planet Explorer, and wouldn't you know it, here we are with a nostalgic minifigure yet again. This sure does seem to be a trend this year. Again, as with Vampire Knight, Ice Planet Explorer fleshes things out and makes something special out of a minifigure which was once a throwaway nothing, but now has been crafted to be the absolute perfect, idealized version of this character. So this particular minifigure looks an awful lot like Dr. Kelvin from the back in the day Ice Planet sub-theme of LEGO Space. And where the Vampire Knight takes things to the logical next step, what we have here is a minifigure which has been created in such detail that it looks like the minifigure you saw in your head when you were playing with Dr. Kelvin as a child, where instead of just some fairly simple red printing for hair, she's got her own hair element that looks more or less the same, where she's got these big old shoulder pads that recreate the look of the way that we imagined this kind of Ice Planet Explorer character looking back in the day, even if the OG version of this character didn't have anything that detailed or anything that fancy on top of her shoulders. There's a fun new helmet piece, there's that wonderful chainsaw that she comes with, complete with trans orange piece in there to really sell that, because that was the colour scheme for this particular sub-theme, and there's a little Lego penguin in the box as well, which is not necessarily part of the minifigure, but is definitely worth mentioning because it's very cute. Personally, I am crossing my fingers very, very tight that this means that eventually we will get some nostalgic love for the UFO sub-theme of LEGO Space, because that was the one that I had as a kid, and that was my favourite. Speaking of my personal favourites, here he is, Ocarina of Time Adult Link. The challenge with picking a minifigure from the Legend of Zelda Lego set is that everybody's going to have their own personal favourite. I do also think that the Breath of the Wild Zelda minifigure is very strong, but in terms of the thing that Lego fans have been wanting forever finally getting its day, it's got to be that adult Ocarina of Time Link, because this thing looks exactly like we all imagined it would. I don't think there are many people who have been to a fan convention or some kind of gaming expo or some kind of Lego event and not at least seen an unlicensed and somewhat bootleg version of an Ocarina of Time adult Link in Lego-ish form. They're all right, they're fine. The quality of the plastic is not quite as good and the quality of the printing is not quite as good, but it is clear from the ubiquity of this particular knockoff minifigure that it is something that a lot of people were desperate to get their hands on for a very, very long time. We wanted Zelda Lego, and finally in 2024 we got Zelda Lego. Now if you look at the top 10 list of Lego sets, you will notice that the Great Deku Tree is conspicuous by its absence for our particular list. The set itself, not necessarily top tier for reasons that I will get into in a second. The minifigures, absolutely spot on. An adult Link as a Lego minifigure completely lives up to the hype and to the desperate wishing that the fans have had for all these years. So this video is actually fairly timely for me because at the time of recording, I think 2 days ago, I beat Ocarina of Time again for the nth time and was just very thrilled to have completed it, and now I get to talk about it again, so it is very exciting for me. Now, when the Great Deku Tree Lego set was first revealed, I made a video about how I felt that it was cruel that the Lego group had put such nice minifigures into such a big and expensive box. But time has passed now, and I've had more time to think about it, and have more time to see people's reaction to this Lego set and how many people are enjoying it. And after all of that, my opinion has shifted, because now I'm angrier. Seeing just how much people are enjoying this Lego set highlights how frustrating it is for so many people that this Lego set is priced at a point where they cannot afford it, where they cannot justify spending the amount of money it would take to buy a Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild on a single Lego set. The specifics of how this Lego set was designed and the negotiations between the Lego group and Nintendo are not public knowledge, but I refuse to believe that nobody at any point during this process, not the designers, not the marketers, not the higher-ups within these companies, nobody ever said, hang on, if we make a really expensive Lego set and make that the only way to be able to get hold of these very sought-after minifigures, people are going to be upset. I don't believe that that was not at any point during the design of this set a discussion. Absolutely, the people involved in making these decisions knew that people would not be happy with the design of this set and the price of this set when there was no other way to get hold of these minifigures, and yet they ignored that. They could have very easily made, say, £100 Zelda set and put that out and made it significantly more affordable, and I think would have sold 5 times as many copies as they sold of this big one this year. Easily, because people want this set, and if it were at a price where they could have afforded it, a lot more people would have purchased it. But because they priced it as high as they did, because they put as many elements into the box, a bunch of which you can't even use in one of the designs for this thing, because of that 2-in-1 design where no matter what you do, you've got just a bunch of elements left over and just hanging on the side. Because they designed the set that way, because they priced it this way, it means that an awful lot of people who really want this Ocarina of Time Adult Link minifigure cannot get an official one, and so are all the more tempted to pick up a bootleg instead. But you know what? In hindsight, it actually gets worse, because this is a case where Sega does what Nintendo don't. When Sonic the Hedgehog returned in minifigure form in the LEGO Ideas Green Hill Zone set, which, for one thing, I absolutely love that set. It is one of my favourite sets of all time. For another thing, it was priced affordably so that people could get hold of it. And for a third thing, this wasn't even his minifigure debut, but when Sonic the Hedgehog released in that set a little while down the line, we also got him in keyring form. So that if all you wanted was a Sonic the Hedgehog minifigure, you could get it for a relatively affordable price. We saw the same thing with Big Bird and Cookie Monster. Oftentimes, when the LEGO Group does a big, fancy LEGO set that contains some exclusive minifigures, even licensed minifigures, you then eventually get them in keyring form so that people can just have the minifigure if that is all they want. And we have not had that for The Legend of Zelda. Now, admittedly, all of this criticism is also true, for example, of Sauron, and you might be thinking, well, why are you making a big fuss of the Zelda one and not of the Lord of the Rings LEGO sets, which are doing exactly the same thing? And the reason is, I don't know. Do you know what? Yeah, actually, that's a fair criticism. And the same for Gambit as well. All of these minifigures are in big sets, and they're unaffordable for people who just want the minifigures, and I don't like that. But the reason why I get this particularly heated over a Nintendo property specifically is because we still don't have Mario minifigures, and it feels like Nintendo and the LEGO Group are actively trying to annoy us by not just giving us what we want. Because as a collector of minifigures, it is always a pain when the LEGO Group locks a noteworthy and important minifigure in a large and expensive set and expects you to buy the entire thing in order to get the tiny little piece of plastic that you're actually after. And that is true across the board, but something about the way that Nintendo partners with the LEGO Group here particularly rubs me up the wrong way, and I will not apologise for being particularly angry about this particular situation, even though it is generally true across the board and has been for years. Somehow, the bubbling resentment that has been festering within me for all of this time spews forth with the Zelda brand in a way that it has not for anything else. All of this is a very long-winded and complainy way of saying, I really hope we get smaller Zelda sets in 2025. I really hope we do. Nothing's been rumoured at this point. It doesn't seem likely, but I'm just gonna cross my fingers and wish for it anyway. Okay, just letting myself calm down a bit, letting that negative energy out. Whew. Number 3, Darth Vader, but he's a Jedi now. Darth Vader in white armor is one of those ideas which is initially so delightfully obscure and yet so ubiquitous that everybody recognizes it. He initially showed up in this particular armor in one panel of one comic that wasn't even canon from like 2 decades ago at this point, and yet this vision of Darth Vader in all white, shiny, sparkly armor has never really left the fandom behind. One of the fun things about the Rebuild the Galaxy Disney Plus show is how it has taken a bunch of the different memes and in-jokes and fan theories from the Star Wars fan community and not canonized them necessarily, but certainly given us an interpretation of them that we never thought that we would actually see. As much fun as Darth Jar Jar might be, the one that really sparkles and shines in LEGO form is this all-white Darth Vader, giving us something that we have seen a million times before, but in a completely different chromatic interpretation. Like, that's the genius of this. There's nothing new here. There's absolutely nothing in terms of elements and in terms of presentation that we have not seen, except that it is completely flipped, and somehow that just makes it so much fun. There is definitely scope for the LEGO Group taking iconic LEGO Star Wars characters and flipping them like this in other ways. I would love to see 2025 get a bunch of different what-if minifigures that just really push the boat on how we interpret these various different LEGO Star Wars characters. It's the little details on this that really sell it, though. The way that they, for example, flipped the lights from red on the initial original Darth Vader design to green on this particular white Darth Vader instead. It just makes him feel all the more unique and different, and I love it when the LEGO designers go that extra mile in really thinking about how to reinterpret something in LEGO form. Number 2 on this list is something different. It is the only one of these 10 minifigures that is not either a nostalgia bait of some variety or other or a licensed IP character. It is Alien Tourist. He is delightful. I love him so much. There's so much to love in this minifigure. I love the colour scheme in particular. I love the grey of his skin coupled with the brilliant hat choice, the yellow of his Hawaiian shirt, the coral of his shorts. I love the big bulbous eyes, which just give him a fun, different look that we don't normally get from minifigures. I love the way that he feels like putting on this hat somehow makes him inconspicuous and that no one is going to necessarily recognise him. I love his little backpack. I love everything. This is just such a fun little minifigure. It is proof that you don't necessarily need a bunch of new different elements to make something a fun minifigure. You just need a very good idea that is executed well. Finally, for the absolute #1 Brick Fanatics top pick best minifigure of 2024, I've brought an interesting visual aid. You were going to look at it and be like, what is that? But it is time to talk about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and the Darth Malak minifigure. First things first, Darth Malak is the big bad villain of Knights of the Old Republic, a Star Wars role-playing game that released in 2003 to critical acclaim. It is one of the best games ever made of all time, bar none, whether we're talking Star Wars games or just any game in general. You might find it a little bit dated if you are coming to it at this point in time, but much like Ocarina of Time as well, it serves as one of the brilliant time capsules of a particular era of video games, which really just shows the top tier pinnacle of what was achieved during that era. The game is set thousands of years before the events of A New Hope, with a bunch of different characters, and one of the freedoms that afforded the developers of the game was that they were basically able to do whatever they wanted in a story without having to worry about any canon. And so you get a character like Malak, who is basically the Darth Vader of the game. Big, imposing, angry, red lightsaber, mysterious injury at some point has replaced parts of his body with cybernetics. He looks very imposing. He is not the Emperor Palpatine of this game. There is a character like that. It is Darth Revan. That's all I'm going to say on that matter, because I want you to play this game and find out about Darth Revan for yourself. But Darth Revan got a minifigure a very long time ago now, in a galaxy far, far away, like over 10 years ago, as a gift with purchase minifigure if you spend £70 or so at the Lego shop, and unfortunately I didn't buy one at the time, and I've always regretted it because they immediately became very, very expensive, because Darth Revan is a fan favourite character who is hotly sought after in all forms of merchandise, but in Lego in particular, because this was a rare one, it's one that you just can't get hold of unless you spend an awful lot of money. And so it feels like, as a gift to those of us who just rue the day that they didn't get that Darth Revan, we've now got Darth Malak, who showed up in an R2-D2 Lego set, which is clearly not something that he is tied to, because he was thousands of years canonically before R2-D2, and so it's clear that this minifigure was created just to make fans happy. I'm not going to complain about that one in the same way that I complain about the Legend of Zelda minifigures, simply because this feels like a bonus extra, something that the Lego group didn't need to do, but they did it because they wanted to, and because they wanted to make people like me happy. So what's this, you're wondering? Well, this was the first thing that I did on the internet that ever got any kind of recognition. And by recognition, I mean like 200 or 300 people maybe read it at one point. I made a fan webcomic for years and years and years, I think between the years of 2006 and 2011 maybe, called Totally KOTOR, which told the story of Knights of the Old Republic, the video game, and its sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2: The Sith Lords, in cutesy, colourful form. These characters were absolutely inspired by Lego minifigures. You can see that in the way that I did this, with 2 dots for eyes and a mouth. And somewhere in here we've got my Darth Malak design. Don't know how well you can see that. If this doesn't turn out in the edit, I will just put this on screen separately anyway in higher resolution. But there's my Darth Malak. I feel like I got this pretty close to the minifigure, if I'm honest. Like, I basically nailed that like a decade before we got the actual minifigure. Suffice to say, the idea of Lego incarnations of Knights of the Old Republic characters is something that I've been hoping for a very long time, and so seeing Darth Malak in Lego form just brings me all this joy. But as with all of the minifigures on this particular list, it is not just the recreation of a licensed IP character that makes them worthy of a spot on the list. Darth Malak's printing and design is brilliant, both his torso and on his legs, and his head as well, which just sparkles with the little attention to detail, which clearly shows that the Lego graphic designer behind this particular minifigure really knew their stuff and were working from a love and a fondness for Darth Malak and Knights of the Old Republic. The most interesting element, though, is the fact that we get his jaw plate in Lego form. Like, that could have very easily been a printed face on the minifigure head, but instead the Lego designers said, you know what, we're going to allocate a little bit of our budget to mass producing an actual Darth Malak chin piece. And whether or not that is going to be used in other minifigures in the future, whether or not there are other opportunities to use that same shape in different things, maybe we'll get lucky with that. But even if this is the only way that this is used, it feels like a treat. It feels like a gift to the Lego fan community and to the Lego Knights of the Old Republic fan community in particular, because they didn't need to do this, and yet they did. That could have been a different element for a different minifigure or for something that would have more widespread cultural recognition, but instead they said, nah, do you know what? We're gonna spend an extra element on Darth Malak because we want to do him right, and that is very much appreciated. Anyway, that is our top 10 picks for LEGO minifigures for the year of 2024. Let us know your top 10 picks in the comments down below, because we are genuinely interested to know what you think. Also, make sure that if you are going to be buying any LEGO in the near future, that you use the affiliate link down in the description, the QR code that is on screen. They take you straight to the LEGO website. When you make a purchase through those links, we just get a little bit of the percentage as a kickback off of the LEGO group. It helps to keep the lights on at Brick Fanatics, helps to keep us making content, doesn't cost you a penny extra. Otherwise, make sure you do all of the regular YouTube things and give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe and the notification bell. Make sure that you go to brickfanatics.com for all of your LEGO news and reviews, and sign up to our newsletter so that you never miss anything LEGO related ever again. Thank you very much, and here's to a good 2025 for all of you. Thanks.